I am a giant panda, Ailuropoda melanoliuca, a member of the bear family Ursidae, yet one so specialized that for decades scientists debated whether I truly belonged among the bears at all. My closest relatives within Ursidae are the spectacled bears of South America, and together we form an ancient lineage that diverged from other bears millions of years ago. I am not to be confused with the red panda, Ailurus fulgens, a smaller rust-colored mammal that shares my mountain forests and my fondness for bamboo, but belongs to an entirely different family. The red panda is more closely related to weasels and raccoons than to me. My scientific name, Ailuropoda, means cat-footed, a reference to the vertical slit pupils I do not actually possess, an error from early descriptions. My species is the only living member of my genus, though fossils reveal that relatives once ranged across much of southern and eastern China, and even into northern Myanmar and Vietnam. I am immediately recognizable. My body is covered in thick fur, white on my face, neck, belly, and rump, and deep black on my ears, around my eyes in distinctive patches, across my shoulders and down my limbs. This bold pattern has inspired countless theories. Some researchers suggest it provides camouflage in the dappled light of snowy, rocky forests, breaking up my outline. Others propose it signals to other pandas, advertising my presence or fitness. Recent studies suggest the dark limbs may help me regulate temperature, absorbing heat in cool climates, while the white body reflects it. The black ears may signal aggression, and the eye patches may help individuals recognize one another or may simply be a byproduct of developmental pathways shared with other carnivores. The true function remains debated, but the pattern is unique among bears. I am a large bear. Adult males typically weigh between 70 and 120 kilograms, though some individuals exceed 130 kilograms. Females are smaller, generally weighing between 60 and 90 kilograms. My body length from nose to rump ranges from 120 to 150 centimeters, with a tail adding another 10 to 15 centimeters. I stand roughly 60 to 90 centimeters at the shoulder when on all fours. My head is broad and round, my snout short and blunt compared to other bears, my jaws immensely powerful. My teeth are broad and flat, adapted for crushing and grinding rather than tearing flesh. My molars are wider and more complex than those of any other bear, ridged and cusped to pulverize tough plant material. My canines are still present and sharp, a reminder of my carnivoran heritage, but they serve more for defense and display than for hunting. My paws are among my most remarkable features. I possess a modified wrist bone, the radial sesamoid, which extends to form a structure often called a pseudo-thumb. This bony projection, covered in a pad of skin, opposes my 5 true fingers and allows me to grasp bamboo stems with precision. I can strip leaves from a stalk, peel away tough outer layers, and manipulate the plant with a dexterity unusual among bears. This adaptation is not a true thumb. It does not contain the same skeletal elements as a primate thumb, and it evolved independently, but it is highly effective. My claws are strong and curved, useful for climbing and for gripping bark and branches, though I do not use them to catch prey as other bears might. My fur is dense, with a coarse outer layer and a thick undercoat that insulates me against the cold, wet conditions of my montane home. Each hair is oily, shedding rain and snow. I molt seasonally, shedding and regrowing fur as temperatures change. My skin beneath the black fur is gray or black. Beneath the white fur, it is pink. This is consistent across individuals, though the exact shade can vary. My eyes are small, with round pupils, not the vertical slits early naturalists mistakenly described. My vision is adequate but not exceptional. I rely more heavily on my sense of smell and my hearing, both of which are acute. I inhabit the mountain ranges of central China, primarily in Sichuan province, but also in Shanxi and Gansu. My range is now fragmented into isolated patches of forest, a consequence of human agriculture, logging, and development over centuries. Historically, I lived at lower elevations and across a broader area, but I have retreated upward and inward as human populations expanded. Today I am found mostly between 1,200 and 3,400 meters in elevation, though I move seasonally. In summer, I may climb to higher slopes where temperatures are cooler and bamboo species differ. In winter, I descend to valleys where snow is less deep and food remains accessible. My habitat is temperate montane forest, dense with bamboo understory, mixed broadleaf and coniferous trees, and frequent mist and rain. The climate is cool and humid year-round, with significant seasonal variation but rarely extreme heat or prolonged drought. I am a bear who eats almost nothing but bamboo. This is extraordinary. Bamboo is a grass, tough and fibrous, low in nutrition, difficult to digest. Most herbivores that specialize on grasses have evolved complex stomachs with multiple chambers, housing symbiotic bacteria that break down cellulose. I have not. I retain the simple stomach of a carnivore, a single-chambered organ suited to digesting meat, not plant matter. My digestive tract is relatively short, and I lack a cecum, the pouch where many herbivores ferment plant material. I do harbor some bacteria in my gut that can break down cellulose, but my digestion is inefficient. I extract only about 17% of the energy available in the bamboo I consume. This is far less than a ruminant or a specialized herbivore would manage. To compensate, I eat vast quantities. I spend 12 to 16 hours each day feeding, consuming 12 to 38 kilograms of bamboo, depending on the part of the plant I am eating and the season. Bamboo is not a single species but a diverse group of grasses in the subfamily Bambusidae. In my range, dozens of bamboo species grow, but I focus on a handful that are abundant and accessible. I prefer different parts of the plant depending on availability and season. In spring, I eat young shoots as they emerge from the soil. Shoots are the most nutritious part, rich in protein and water, tender and relatively easy to digest. I consume them ravenously, biting them off at the base and peeling away the tough sheaths to reach the soft interior. Shoots are available for only a few weeks each year, and I time my movements to coincide with their emergence at different elevations. In summer and autumn, I eat leaves, stripping them from branches with my pseudothumb, chewing methodically. Leaves are less nutritious than shoots but more digestible than stems. In winter and much of the year, I eat culms, the woody stems of mature bamboo. Culms are tough and fibrous, the least nutritious part, but they are available year-round when shoots and leaves are scarce. I select thick culms, bite them into manageable sections, and crush them with my powerful jaws, grinding the fragments with my flattened molars. My jaw muscles are enormous, attached to a sagittal crest on my skull that provides leverage. My bite force is among the strongest of any mammal relative to body size, capable of exerting over 200 pounds of pressure, allowing me to shatter bamboo stems that would defeat most animals. I do not chew with the rapid, side-to-side motion of a ruminant. Instead, I use a crushing, grinding motion, pulverizing the plant material before swallowing. My esophagus is lined with a tough, keratinized epithelium to protect against splinters and abrasion. My stomach secretes mucus to coat the contents, reducing damage from sharp fragments. Despite these adaptations, bamboo is hard on my digestive system. I pass food through my gut in 8 to 14 hours, far faster than a typical herbivore, which may retain food for days. This rapid passage limits my ability to extract nutrients, but also limits the time bamboo sits fermenting, reducing the production of gas and the risk of bloat. I am a solitary animal for most of my life. I do not form lasting bonds with other pandas except between mother and offspring, and even those dissolve after roughly 18 months. I occupy a home range, an area I traverse in search of food, water, and shelter, but I do not defend this space as a strict territory. Home ranges of multiple individuals often overlap, especially between males and females, or among females. Adult males have larger ranges, sometimes exceeding 6 square kilometers, while females occupy smaller areas, often 3 to 5 square kilometers, centered on reliable food sources. These ranges shift with the seasons as I follow bamboo productivity up and down the mountain slopes. I mark my range with scent, using secretions from glands beneath my tail and around my anus. I rub these secretions on trees, rocks, and the ground, often at specific marking sites used by multiple individuals over time. I also mark with urine, often performing a handstand to urinate as high as possible on a tree trunk, signaling my size and perhaps my condition. Males scent mark more frequently than females, particularly during the breeding season. I communicate primarily through scent. My anal glands produce a thick, waxy secretion with a complex chemical profile that varies among individuals and changes with reproductive state, age, and health. Other pandas can detect these differences, reading information about identity, sex, and readiness to mate. I also vocalize, though I am not as vocal as some bear species. I bleat, a sound like a sheep or goat, often used by cubs to call their mothers or by adults during courtship. I honk, a sound that can signal fear or submission. I bark sharply when startled or threatened. I huff and snort when annoyed. During mating, I produce a variety of chirps, moans, and growls, and males may roar to warn off rivals. I use body language as well. A lowered head signals aggression or dominance, while lying on the back with legs in the air is a submissive or playful gesture. Direct eye contact can be a threat, and I may avert my gaze to avoid confrontation. I am most active during the day, though my schedule is flexible. I feed in bouts throughout the day and night, interspersed with rest periods. I do not have a strict circadian rhythm. Rather, my activity is dictated by the need to consume enough bamboo to meet my energy needs. In hot weather, I may rest more during midday and feed in the cooler morning and evening hours. In cold or snowy weather, I may be active whenever conditions allow access to food. I do not hibernate. Unlike many bear species that enter a deep torpor during winter, surviving on fat reserves, I remain active year-round. Bamboo is available in winter, though buried under snow in some areas, and I continue to feed. My low metabolic rate, an adaptation to my low-energy diet, allows me to survive the cold without the need for hibernation. My metabolism is roughly 40% lower than would be predicted for a mammal of my size, closer to that of a sloth than a typical bear. This means I burn fewer calories at rest, reducing the total food intake required. But it also means I move slowly and deliberately, conserving energy with every step. I am an excellent climber. Despite my bulk, I ascend trees with ease, using my strong limbs and sharp claws to grip bark. I climb to escape danger, to rest on branches above the ground, and sometimes to feed on bamboo that grows in the canopy or to access other plant foods. Young pandas are especially arboreal, spending much time in trees where they are safer from predators. As I grow larger and heavier, I climb less frequently, but I retain the ability throughout my life. I am also a competent swimmer, crossing rivers and streams when necessary, though I do not seek out water for recreation. I bathe occasionally, lying in shallow streams to cool off or perhaps to groom my fur, but I am not as water-oriented as some bear species. My diet, while dominated by bamboo, is not absolutely exclusive. I am an opportunistic omnivore when the chance arises. I have been documented eating other plants, including grasses, wild flowers, roots, and bark. I consume wild tubers, digging them from the soil with my claws. I eat fruit when available, though fruit is not abundant in my montane habitat. I scavenge carrion on rare occasions, feeding on the carcasses of dead animals such as takin, serow, or smaller mammals. I have been observed catching and eating small rodents, and there are records of pandas consuming insects, birds, eggs, and even fish from mountain streams. These animal foods provide protein and fat that bamboo lacks, and they may be especially important for pregnant or lactating females or for growing cubs. However, such foods make up less than 1% of my diet in most populations. My reliance on bamboo is nearly total, and this specialization defines my ecology. The bamboo I depend upon is itself subject to dramatic cycles. Bamboo species are unusual among plants in that they reproduce synchronously, with entire populations flowering, setting seed, and dying at the same time, often after decades of vegetative growth. These mass flowering events, called masting, can occur on cycles of 15 to 120 years, depending on the species. When a bamboo species flowers and dies, the understory it formed disappears, and it may take years for new bamboo to grow from seed and reach a size I can eat. In the past, when my range was continuous, I could move to areas where other bamboo species remained available. Today, with my habitat fragmented, such movements are often impossible. Mass flowering events have caused localized food shortages and starvation in isolated panda populations. In the mid-1970s and again in the mid-1980s, large-scale bamboo die-offs in Sichuan killed dozens of pandas before rescue and supplemental feeding efforts were organized. These events revealed how vulnerable I am to habitat fragmentation and the loss of connectivity between forest patches. I face predation, though it is rare for adults. As a cub, I am vulnerable to a range of predators. Leopards, though now scarce in my range, historically preyed on young pandas. Yellow-throated martens, large and aggressive mustelids, have been known to attack cubs. Golden cats, leopard cats, and large raptors such as eagles may also pose a threat to very young or unguarded offspring. Adult pandas, however, are formidable. My size, strength, and powerful jaws deter most predators. I can defend myself with bites and swipes of my clawed paws. My bold coloration may also serve as a warning, advertising that I am not easy prey. Nonetheless, I am not immune to danger. I can be injured in falls from trees or cliffs, in fights with other pandas, or in encounters with other large mammals such as Asiatic black bears, which share my habitat and occasionally compete for food or space. Disease and parasites also affect me. I carry intestinal worms, ticks, and mites. I suffer from respiratory infections, digestive ailments, and injuries that can become infected. Mortality from disease is difficult to measure in wild populations, but it is a recognized factor in cub and juvenile survival. I reach sexual maturity between 4 and 8 years of age, with females typically maturing slightly earlier than males. The breeding season is tightly constrained, occurring once per year in the spring, generally from March through May. This timing ensures that cubs are born in late summer or early autumn, when temperatures are mild, and bamboo shoots will be available the following spring to support the mother's increased nutritional demands. Females are in estrus for only 1 to 3 days per year, one of the shortest fertile windows of any mammal. During this brief period, a female becomes restless, increases scent marking, vocalizes more frequently, and may actively seek out males. Males detect her readiness through scent and sound, traveling into her range to compete for mating opportunities. Multiple males may converge on a single receptive female, and competition can be intense. Males posture, vocalize, and sometimes fight, biting and shoving one another. The largest, most dominant male usually gains access, but smaller males may mate if they can avoid direct confrontation. Copulation is brief, lasting from 30 seconds to 5 minutes and may occur multiple times over the female's estrus period. Mating is noisy, with both partners vocalizing, and it often takes place on the ground, though occasionally in trees. After mating, the male departs. He provides no parental care and may never encounter the female or offspring again. The female undergoes delayed implantation, a phenomenon common in bears, where the fertilized egg floats free in the uterus for weeks or months before implanting in the uterine wall and beginning active development. This delay allows the female to time birth precisely, ensuring it occurs in favorable conditions. Total gestation from mating to birth is approximately 95 to 160 days, though active fetal development occupies only about 50 to 60 days. Birth typically occurs in August or September. The female seeks out a den, often a hollow tree, a cave, or a sheltered rock crevice, lined with bamboo leaves and other vegetation. She gives birth to 1 or 2 cubs, occasionally 3, though twins are most common. Triplets are extremely rare and usually do not all survive. The newborn cub is among the most altricial, or underdeveloped, of any placental mammal relative to the mother's size. At birth, I weigh between 90 and 130 grams, roughly 1/900th the weight of my mother, smaller than a stick of butter, pink, blind, hairless, and utterly helpless. My eyes are sealed shut, my ears are closed, and I cannot regulate my own body temperature. I am entirely dependent on my mother's warmth and milk. My mother cradles me against her chest, holding me with one paw while she leans against the den wall. She does not leave the den for the first several days after birth, foregoing food and water to care for me continuously. She licks me to stimulate urination and defecation, and keeps me clean. If she gives birth to 2 cubs, she typically chooses one to care for and allows the other to die. This harsh reality reflects the immense energy cost of raising even a single cub on a bamboo diet. A mother cannot produce enough milk to support 2 offspring adequately, and attempting to raise both would likely result in the death of all 3 of us. In managed care settings, where nutrition is supplemented and staff can hand-rear a cub, both twins can sometimes survive, but in the wild, single cub rearing is the rule. I grow slowly. By 1 week of age, my skin begins to darken where black fur will emerge. By 2 weeks, I have a thin coat of fur, and my distinctive black and white pattern is visible. My eyes open at 6 to 8 weeks, revealing dark, beady eyes that will gradually improve in focus. My ears open around the same time, and I begin to hear my mother's vocalizations and the sounds of the forest. I begin to crawl at around 3 months, exploring the den and testing my limbs. By 4 months, I can walk unsteadily, and I begin to venture outside the den under my mother's watchful eye. She carries me by the scruff of my neck if danger threatens, and she moves me to a new den if the first becomes unsuitable, perhaps due to parasites, flooding, or disturbance. I nurse frequently. My mother's milk is rich in fat, containing approximately 25% fat, much higher than the milk of most other bears and comparable to that of seals and other marine mammals that must support rapid growth in harsh environments. This high fat content compensates somewhat for the low energy my mother derives from her bamboo diet. I nurse for small, frequent meals, vocalizing with bleats and squeals to signal hunger. My mother responds with soft vocalizations of her own, a form of communication that strengthens our bond. I continue to nurse for approximately 9 months, though I begin to sample bamboo at around 6 months of age. My teeth erupt gradually, with baby teeth replaced by permanent teeth over my first 2 years. Learning to eat bamboo is a gradual process. I watch my mother, imitating her movements, learning which species to select, how to grasp and manipulate stems, and how to strip leaves. My jaw muscles and digestive system are not yet fully developed, so early bamboo consumption supplements rather than replaces nursing. By 1 year of age, I weigh roughly 25 to 35 kilograms, a quarter to a third of my eventual adult weight, though individual variation is considerable. I am playful and curious, climbing trees, wrestling with objects, and exploring my surroundings. Play serves multiple functions. It develops motor skills, builds strength and coordination, and may help me learn to assess risks and navigate the forest. My mother remains attentive but gradually grants me more independence. By 18 months, I am weaned and nutritionally independent, though I may remain with my mother for a few more months, gradually increasing the time I spend apart from her. Eventually, she signals that I must leave, often by becoming less tolerant of my presence or by leaving the area herself. This separation typically coincides with the next breeding season, as she prepares to mate again. If she does not mate or does not conceive, I may remain with her longer, but typically by age 2, I am on my own. As a newly independent juvenile, I am vulnerable. I must establish my own home range, often in marginal habitat or overlapping with other individuals, and I must avoid conflicts with larger, more experienced adults. My survival during this period is uncertain. Mortality is highest in the first 2 years of life and again during the dispersal and subadult phase. I may struggle to find sufficient food, especially if bamboo availability is poor. I may succumb to disease, injury, or predation. I may be unable to compete effectively for space or resources. Population studies suggest that fewer than half of all cubs born in the wild survive to reproductive age. If I do survive, I continue to grow, reaching full adult size by age 4 to 5 for females, 5 to 7 for males. Growth does not stop abruptly. I continue to add weight and bulk gradually into my early adult years, and older adults may be noticeably larger and more robust than younger ones. Lifespan in the wild is difficult to measure, as following individual pandas over decades is challenging. Estimates based on tooth wear, mark recapture studies, and known individuals suggest wild pandas can live 15 to 20 years, with some individuals possibly reaching 25 or 30. In managed care, where food is abundant, veterinary care is available, and threats are absent, pandas regularly live into their 20s and even their 30s. The oldest recorded panda in managed care lived to 38 years. This discrepancy highlights the mortality pressures I face in the wild. Food scarcity, disease, injury, and the physiological costs of reproduction all shorten lifespan. Adult males and females differ not only in size but in behavior and ecology. Males are larger, more mobile, and less attached to specific areas. During the breeding season, a male may travel extensively, crossing the ranges of multiple females in search of mating opportunities. He invests energy in competition and display rather than in parental care. His mortality risk may increase during this time due to fights with rivals, increased exposure to predators while traveling, and reduced feeding as he prioritizes reproduction. Females, by contrast, are more sedentary, remaining closer to core areas with reliable food. They invest enormously in reproduction, not through competition for mates, but through the prolonged and energetically costly process of gestation, birth, and cub rearing. A female may reproduce only every 2 years, or less frequently if a cub dies or if conditions are poor. Over her lifetime, a female may successfully rear only 5 to 8 cubs, and only a fraction of those will survive to reproduce themselves. This low reproductive rate makes population recovery slow and makes every individual female critically important to the species. Persistence. Pandas do not form long-term pair bonds, nor do they live in family groups beyond the mother-cub unit. However, kinship does influence spatial patterns. Daughters sometimes establish home ranges near their mothers, creating clusters of related females. These clusters may facilitate information transfer about food sources or reduce the costs of occasional encounters. Males disperse farther, reducing the risk of inbreeding. Genetic studies reveal that panda populations, even when geographically close, can be genetically distinct, a consequence of habitat fragmentation and limited movement between forest patches. This genetic isolation increases the risk of inbreeding depression, where mating among relatives reduces genetic diversity and offspring fitness. Conservation programs increasingly focus on maintaining habitat corridors to allow movement and gene flow between populations. My ecological role extends beyond my direct consumption of bamboo. I am a seed disperser, albeit an inefficient one. While I digest bamboo poorly, seeds from other plants I consume occasionally may pass through my digestive system intact and be deposited in my feces, potentially aiding plant reproduction. I am also an ecosystem engineer, though in a more subtle way than some species. My feeding creates gaps in the bamboo understory, altering light conditions and potentially influencing the growth of other plants. My scent marking and wallowing may concentrate nutrients in specific areas, affecting soil chemistry and plant growth. I am prey for large carnivores, at least as a cub, and my carcasses, when I die, provide food for scavengers and nutrients for the soil. I am host to a variety of parasites, and I may play a role in maintaining those species' life cycles, though this is not well studied. I coexist with a variety of other mammals in my mountain forests. Asiatic black bears share my habitat and also eat bamboo occasionally, though they are more omnivorous and mobile than I am. We compete for space and sometimes for bamboo, particularly during mass flowering events when food is scarce. Golden snub-nosed monkeys live in the canopy above me, feeding on lichens and leaves. Takin, large, robust ungulates, graze in alpine meadows and bamboo thickets at higher elevations. Serow, goat-like animals, navigate rocky slopes. Red pandas forage in the same bamboo but tend to select different species or different parts of the plant, reducing direct competition. Wild boar root in the forest floor. Small carnivores such as yellow-throated martens, hog badgers, and various weasels hunt rodents and other prey. Rodents themselves are diverse, including voles, rats, and bamboo rats, some of which feed on bamboo shoots and roots, potentially competing with me. Birds are abundant, from pheasants on the forest floor to laughing thrushes and leaf warblers in the canopy. This community is rich and interconnected, and I am one piece of a complex ecological puzzle. Human beings have lived in and around my habitat for thousands of years. Historically, people harvested bamboo for construction, tools, and food. They hunted wildlife, including pandas, though I was never a preferred prey due to my low-fat content and the difficulty of killing a large bear. My pelt, however, was valued, and I was hunted for my skin and occasionally for other body parts used in traditional medicine. Ancient Chinese texts mention pandas, referring to me by various names, and I appear in art and folklore. My role in human culture is complex. I am both revered and exploited, a symbol of rarity and a resource to be used. By the mid-20th century, my population had declined drastically due to habitat loss and hunting. The Chinese government recognized the crisis and, beginning in the 1960s, established nature reserves to protect my remaining habitat. Hunting was banned, and I was designated a national treasure, a status that afforded me legal protection and made me a symbol of conservation. Today, there are over 60 nature reserves protecting panda habitat, covering more than 10,000 square kilometers. These reserves vary in size, management effectiveness, and connectivity. Some are well-staffed and enforced. Others struggle with limited resources. The establishment of reserves has slowed habitat loss in some areas but has not stopped it entirely. Outside reserves, forests continue to be cleared for agriculture, settlements, and infrastructure. Roads and railways fragment habitat, impeding my movement and isolating populations. Tourism, both within and near reserves, brings economic benefits to local communities, but also introduces disturbance, noise, and the risk of disease transmission from humans to wildlife. Managed breeding programs, both within China and internationally, have successfully bred pandas in captivity, and some captive-born individuals have been released into the wild to supplement populations. These programs have generated valuable knowledge about panda biology and have raised global awareness, but they are expensive and logistically complex, and the long-term success of reintroduction efforts is still being evaluated. My conservation status has improved in recent decades. In 2016, the International Union for Conservation of Nature reclassified me from endangered to vulnerable, recognizing that my population had increased and that immediate extinction risk had decreased. Population estimates based on surveys and genetic analysis suggest there are approximately 1,800 individuals in the wild, an increase from fewer than 1,000 in the late 20th century. This recovery is a conservation success, but I remain vulnerable. My habitat is still fragmented, my reproductive rate is low, and I am highly specialized, making me sensitive to environmental changes. Climate change poses a new and uncertain threat. As temperatures rise, the distribution of bamboo species may shift, potentially moving upslope or beyond the elevations I can access. Changes in precipitation patterns, snow cover, and seasonal timing may disrupt bamboo growth and my ability to track food availability. Models predict that climate change could reduce suitable habitat by significant percentages over the coming decades, though projections vary and depend on the severity of warming and on my ability to adapt or move. There are persistent misconceptions about my species. One common myth is that I am too specialized to survive, that I am an evolutionary dead end, a relic doomed to extinction. This is not accurate. I have existed for millions of years, adapting to a niche that is narrow but, until recently, stable. My specialization is a successful strategy in an environment where bamboo is abundant and reliable. The crisis I face now is not due to my biology, but to human actions that have destroyed and fragmented my habitat. Another misconception is that I am lazy or lethargic. In truth, my low activity level is an adaptation to a low-energy diet. I move slowly to conserve energy, not because I lack the capability for speed or strength. When necessary, I can move quickly, climb with agility, and defend myself vigorously. A third misconception is that I am difficult to breed in captivity because I have lost interest in reproduction. Early breeding programs struggled, but research revealed that inexperience, stress, and inappropriate social conditions, not lack of libido, were the primary obstacles. With improved husbandry, pandas breed successfully in managed care, producing healthy offspring. A day in my life is rhythmic and repetitive, structured around the imperative to eat. I wake in the den or resting spot where I spent the night, a hollow tree or a sheltered thicket. The mountain air is cool, mist clinging to the trees, and I hear the calls of birds and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. I stretch, extending my limbs, arching my back, and then begin to move slowly through the understory. My first task is to feed. I locate a patch of bamboo, selecting stems based on species, age, and condition. I bite, crush, and chew, the sound of breaking culms sharp in the quiet forest. I eat methodically, sitting or reclining, sometimes propped against a tree, using my pseudothumb to manipulate the bamboo. The texture is fibrous, the taste mildly sweet from the sugars in young shoots or leaves, though much of the plant is tough and bland. I eat for 2 or 3 hours, then rest, my stomach distended with bamboo fragments. Resting is not sleep but a state of quiet digestion, lying on my side or back, sometimes grooming my fur with my tongue and claws, removing dirt, parasites, and loose hair. I may doze briefly. After resting, I move to a new feeding site. I do not range widely in a single day. My movements are local, covering perhaps a few hundred meters, focused on areas where bamboo is dense and accessible. I may climb a tree to reach a different bamboo species or to feed on leaves in the canopy. I may descend to a stream to drink, lapping water with my tongue, or I may obtain sufficient moisture from the bamboo itself, which is 60 to 90% water by weight. If I encounter another panda, the interaction is brief. We may sniff each other, assessing identity and condition through scent, and then move apart. If the other individual is a stranger or a rival, especially during the breeding season, the encounter may be tense, marked by vocalizations, posturing, and rarely a physical scuffle. I avoid such conflicts when possible, as injury can be costly. I scent mark as I move, rubbing my hindquarters on a tree or performing a handstand to urinate. These marks advertise my presence and, during the breeding season, my reproductive state. In the afternoon, I feed again, another long bout of chewing and swallowing. The pattern repeats: feed, rest, move, feed, rest. As evening approaches, the light dims and the forest grows quieter. I seek out a place to spend the night, returning to the same den if it is nearby, or finding a new spot if I have ranged farther. I settle in, curling up or sprawling out depending on the temperature, and I rest through the night, waking occasionally to adjust my position or to listen to the sounds around me. This routine varies little from day to day, season to season, year to year. The landmarks of my life are the availability of bamboo, the changing seasons, the brief intensity of the breeding season, and for females, the all-consuming task of raising a cub. Family, for my species, is narrowly defined but profoundly important. It is the bond between mother and cub, a relationship that lasts 18 months to 2 years and is characterized by constant contact, communication, and care. The mother is teacher, protector, and sole provider. The cub learns from her every behavior it will need to survive: how to select and process bamboo, how to navigate the forest, how to avoid danger, how to interact with others. This learning is not instinctual in the sense of being hardwired and automatic. It is observational and experiential. Cubs raised without mothers, as sometimes occurs in managed care, must be taught these skills by humans or by foster mothers, and they may display behavioral abnormalities if care is inadequate. The mother's investment is enormous. She does not eat during the first days after birth. Even after she resumes feeding, she must consume more bamboo to produce milk, and she must balance the time spent feeding with the need to attend to her cub. If food is scarce, she may be unable to produce enough milk, and the cub may starve. Her reproductive success is tightly linked to habitat quality. For males, family has no meaning beyond the act of mating. A male does not recognize his offspring, does not provide care, and may never encounter them. His genetic legacy depends on his ability to compete with other males and to mate with multiple females over his lifetime. This difference in parental investment between males and females is a fundamental feature of panda biology and influences nearly every aspect of behavior and ecology. It also has implications for conservation. Protecting females and ensuring they have access to high-quality habitat is critical for population growth. Males, while less directly involved in reproduction, are necessary for genetic diversity and for providing mating opportunities. Both sexes are essential, but their roles and needs differ. As I age, my body changes. My teeth wear down from years of crushing bamboo, becoming blunt and less effective. I may struggle to process the toughest calms and may select softer food when possible. My fur may thin or gray, though this is less obvious in a black and white coat than in some species. My mobility decreases. I climb less frequently and I move more slowly. My senses may dull, making me less aware of predators or less able to assess scent marks accurately. My immune system weakens, making me more susceptible to disease. If I am female and still reproducing, the demands of late-life pregnancy and cub rearing may strain my body further. Older females may have longer intervals between births or may cease reproducing altogether if their condition declines. If I am male, I may be displaced by younger, stronger rivals and may lose access to mates. Old age in the wild is a gradual decline, and few pandas die of old age in a peaceful, predictable way. More often, death comes from injury, disease, starvation during a bamboo shortage, or the accumulated stress of a harsh environment. Researchers study me through a variety of methods. Direct observation is difficult. I am elusive, my habitat is dense and rugged, and I avoid humans when I detect them. Early studies relied on scat analysis, examining feces to determine diet, health, and more recently, genetic identity. Camera traps, motion-activated cameras placed on trails and in feeding areas, have revolutionized panda research, allowing scientists to document individuals, estimate population size, and observe behavior without disturbance. GPS collars fitted to captured pandas provide data on movement, home range size, and habitat use, though capturing and collaring a wild panda is challenging and stressful for the animal. Genetic analysis of scat, hair, and tissue samples allows researchers to assess genetic diversity, relatedness, and population structure. These studies have revealed that panda populations are more fragmented and genetically isolated than once thought, and they have guided conservation planning, identifying priority areas for habitat protection and corridors for connectivity. I'm also studied in managed care settings, where conditions can be controlled and behavior observed in detail. These studies have provided insights into reproductive physiology, cub development, nutrition, and disease. Managed care pandas have been used to develop techniques for artificial insemination, which has become an important tool for maintaining genetic diversity in captivity and for supplementing wild populations. Research on captive pandas has also clarified the role of social experience in mating success, leading to changes in husbandry that allow young pandas to observe and interact with others, improving their later reproductive competence. However, managed care is not a substitute for wild populations. Behavior in captivity differs from behavior in the wild, and reintroducing captive-born pandas to the wild is fraught with challenges. Released pandas must learn to find food, avoid predators, navigate unfamiliar terrain, and compete with wild individuals, skills that are difficult to teach in a captive environment. Some reintroduction efforts have succeeded. Others have ended in the death of the released animal. This work is ongoing, and success rates are improving as methods are refined. My relationship with humans is now mediated largely through conservation programs, tourism, and media. I have become a global icon, the symbol of the World Wildlife Fund, and the face of endangered species conservation worldwide. My image is used to raise funds, inspire action, and educate the public about biodiversity loss. This attention has brought substantial resources to my conservation, but it has also created challenges. The focus on pandas has sometimes diverted attention and funding from other species and ecosystems in need. This is known as the charismatic megafauna bias, the tendency for large, appealing animals to dominate conservation discourse, while less visible species are neglected. Critics argue that resources should be allocated based on ecological importance or extinction risk, rather than public appeal. Supporters counter that pandas serve as umbrella species, meaning that protecting panda habitat also protects countless other species that share the same forests. Both perspectives have merit. The reality is that conservation is shaped by human values, politics, and economics as much as by biology, and my iconic status, while not entirely fair, has been a powerful tool for protecting the ecosystems I inhabit. Tourism centered on pandas has grown significantly. Reserves and breeding centers attract millions of visitors each year, generating revenue that supports conservation and local economies. Tourists come to see me, to photograph me, and to learn about my biology and the threats I face. This attention is valuable, but it must be managed carefully. Too many visitors, too much noise, and too much infrastructure can disturb wild pandas, displace them from preferred habitat, and increase stress. Disease transmission from humans to pandas is a concern, as is the risk that habituated pandas will lose their wariness and be more vulnerable to poaching or accidents. Balancing the benefits of tourism with the need to minimize disturbance is an ongoing challenge for reserve managers. I am a bear adapted to an improbable niche, a carnivore that eats grass, a solitary animal in dense forests, a mother who invests everything in a single helpless infant, a species that has survived ice ages, climate shifts, and human expansion, now facing a future shaped by habitat fragmentation and a warming world. I am neither doomed nor saved. My fate depends on choices made by people far from my mountain home. I am a product of millions of years of evolution, a specialist shaped by the availability of bamboo and the demands of a cool, wet, montane environment. I am also a symbol, a focus of human attention and concern, a beneficiary of conservation efforts that are as much about human values as about ecological science. I do not think in the terms humans use, do not contemplate my symbolic role or the political debates surrounding my survival. I experience the world through scent, sound, taste, and touch, through the satisfaction of a full stomach and the warmth of the sun on my fur, through the instinctual drive to feed, to reproduce, to survive. My life is lived in the present, in the immediate demands of finding food, avoiding danger, and for females, raising young. I do not mourn the loss of habitat I never knew existed, do not grieve for the individuals who died in bamboo die-offs or for the cubs that did not survive. I respond to the environment I encounter, moving when conditions change, feeding when food is available, resting when energy must be conserved. This is the nature of wild animals. We are shaped by evolution to respond to the world as it is, not to imagine what it could be. Yet my future is uncertain in ways that evolution did not prepare me for. My ancestors faced changes, but those changes were slow, unfolding over millennia, allowing populations to adapt through natural selection, to shift ranges, to evolve new tolerances. The changes I face now are rapid, driven by human technology and population growth, accelerating faster than adaptation can occur. Habitat that took thousands of years to develop is cleared in a season. Climate patterns that were stable for generations are shifting within a single lifetime. Populations that once exchanged genes freely are now isolated, cut off by roads, farms, and cities. I can respond to local conditions, moving to find food, seeking shelter from weather, but I cannot respond to landscape-level fragmentation, to the loss of connectivity, to the steady erosion of the forests that have been my home for eons. Conservation efforts have made a difference. The establishment of reserves, the enforcement of hunting bans, the restoration of degraded habitat, and the construction of corridors to link isolated populations have all contributed to my population's recovery. Continued support for these efforts is essential. Protecting existing habitat is the foundation, but it is not sufficient. Habitat must be expanded, degraded areas restored, and corridors maintained and enhanced to allow movement and gene flow. Climate change adaptation strategies must be integrated into conservation planning, anticipating shifts in bamboo distribution, and ensuring that I have access to suitable habitat as conditions change. This may involve assisted migration, translocating individuals to areas predicted to remain suitable, or managing forests to favor bamboo species that are more resilient to warming temperatures. These interventions are complex, uncertain, and controversial, but they may be necessary if I am to persist in a rapidly changing world. My story is not mine alone. I share my fate with thousands of other species in the mountains of central China, from the golden snub-nosed monkey to the Chinese giant salamander, from rare orchids to endemic insects, all facing the same pressures of habitat loss, fragmentation, and climate change. My conservation is their conservation. The forests that sustain me sustain them. The corridors that allow me to move allow them to move. The protections afforded to me extend, imperfectly, to the entire ecosystem. This is the umbrella species concept made tangible. By focusing on my needs, conservation programs address the needs of many others, though not all, and not always adequately. I'm also a reminder of the limits of conservation. Despite decades of effort and substantial investment, my population remains small and fragmented. My reproductive rate remains low. My dependence on bamboo remains absolute. I am not a species that can be managed with simple interventions. I require vast areas of intact forest, stable bamboo populations, freedom from human disturbance, and time to reproduce and raise young. I cannot be saved by captive breeding alone, nor by reserves that are too small or too isolated. I require a landscape-level approach, integrating conservation with human land use, balancing the needs of wildlife with the needs of rural communities who depend on the same forests for their livelihoods. This is difficult work, requiring cooperation across government agencies, scientific institutions, local communities, and international organizations. It requires funding, political will, and long-term commitment. It requires acknowledging that conservation is not just about protecting animals, but about shaping human behavior, land use, and economic development. My reproduction and production, as a biological system, are tightly constrained by my bamboo diet and my physiological adaptations to it. I produce milk that is exceptionally rich, a necessity given the low energy I extract from bamboo and the long dependency period of my cub. Milk production is energetically expensive, requiring the mother to consume more food and to mobilize body reserves if food is insufficient. The volume of milk produced is small compared to some mammals, but its high fat content compensates. Research on captive pandas has measured milk composition in detail, revealing not only high fat, but also elevated protein and minerals essential for cub growth. The mother's ability to produce this milk is linked directly to her body condition and food intake. And in the wild, where food quality and availability fluctuate, milk production may vary, affecting cub growth rates and survival. Females in poorer condition may produce less milk or milk of lower quality, leading to slower cub growth and higher mortality. This connection between habitat quality, maternal condition, and reproductive success is a key focus of conservation physiology research. I do not produce venom, silk, or any other unusual biological product. My scent gland secretions are complex and biologically interesting, containing a variety of volatile organic compounds that convey information, but they are not harvested or used by humans in any significant way. My feces, largely undigested bamboo, decompose slowly and contribute nutrients to the soil, supporting forest plant growth. My urine, similarly, deposits nitrogen and other nutrients. These are modest ecological contributions, but they are part of the larger nutrient cycling processes that sustain forest ecosystems. I do not produce anything that humans exploit commercially, a fact that has both protected and endangered me. I was never domesticated, never farmed, never valued primarily for my products. I was hunted, but not intensively, and my conservation has been driven more by symbolic value than by economic utility. This may have spared me the fate of species that are overexploited for their products, but it also means that my conservation does not generate direct economic returns, making it reliant on government funding, donations, and ecotourism. The production of offspring, in terms of numbers and timing, is another critical aspect of my biology. A female panda, if she breeds successfully, may give birth every 2 years, though intervals can be longer if a cub dies early, if she fails to mate, or if conditions are poor. Over a reproductive lifespan of roughly 15 to 20 years, from first breeding at age 5 or 6 to cessation in her early 20s, a female may produce 6 to 10 litters, though not all will result in surviving offspring. If each litter produces one cub, and half of those survive to maturity, a successful female may contribute 3 to 5 offspring to the next generation. This is a low reproductive output compared to many mammals, which can produce dozens or even hundreds of offspring in a lifetime. My low output is a consequence of my specialization. Raising a cub on a bamboo diet is so energetically demanding that frequent reproduction is not possible. This life history strategy is known as K-selection, characterized by few offspring, high parental investment, and long lifespans. It is adaptive in stable environments where food is predictable and mortality is low, but it makes populations vulnerable to sudden changes or increased mortality, as recovery is slow. Seasonality governs much of my life. Bamboo productivity varies seasonally, with shoots emerging in spring, leaves abundant in summer and autumn, and only culms available in winter. My movements track this variation, and my body condition fluctuates accordingly. I gain weight in spring and early summer when shoots are available, building fat reserves that help me survive the leaner winter months. Weight loss during winter is normal, and individuals may lose 10 to 20% of their body weight by spring. This seasonal cycle is an integral part of my ecology, and it influences reproductive success. Females that enter the breeding season in good condition are more likely to conceive, carry a pregnancy to term, and produce healthy cubs. Those in poor condition may not ovulate, may suffer embryonic resorption, or may be unable to support a cub after birth. This connection between seasonal food availability, body condition, and reproduction is well documented in many mammals, and it highlights the importance of maintaining habitat quality year-round. Temperature regulation is another challenge. My thick fur insulates me well against cold, and I am comfortable in temperatures that would be uncomfortable or dangerous for less insulated species. However, I am vulnerable to heat. Pandas have been observed panting, seeking shade, lying on cool rocks, and reducing activity during hot weather. In zoos and breeding centers in warmer climates, air conditioning and pools are provided to prevent heat stress. In the wild, I rely on the cool, moist conditions of montane forests. As temperatures rise due to climate change, I may be forced to move to higher elevations where conditions remain suitable. However, higher elevations may have different bamboo species, lower productivity, and harsher winter conditions. There is a limit to how high I can go before food becomes insufficient or winter snow too deep. This creates a potential trap. Warming pushes me upward, but there is only so much mountain above me. Models of climate impact on pandas suggest that without adaptation or assisted migration, suitable habitat could shrink significantly. Water balance is less of a challenge for me than for many mammals because bamboo provides ample moisture. I do not need to drink frequently, though I do so opportunistically when near streams or springs. My kidneys are efficient, producing concentrated urine to minimize water loss, but this is not as critical for me as it is for desert-dwelling species. Bamboo's high water content means I am rarely at risk of dehydration, though during dry periods or when feeding on older, drier culms, I may increase water intake. This reliance on bamboo for hydration ties me even more tightly to my food source. I cannot easily shift to drier foods without access to water, limiting dietary flexibility. My sensory world is dominated by smell and hearing. My sense of smell is acute, allowing me to detect scent marks from other pandas at considerable distances, to assess the freshness of marks, and to extract detailed information about the individual who left them. I can distinguish between male and female, between familiar and unfamiliar individuals, and likely between kin and non-kin, though this latter ability has not been thoroughly tested in the wild. My sense of hearing is also well developed. I can hear the high-pitched bleats of cubs, the low-frequency vocalizations of other adults, and the sounds of potential predators or disturbances. My vision, while adequate, is not exceptional. I am not a pursuit predator, and I do not need the sharp vision of a raptor or the color discrimination of a primate. I see well enough to navigate the forest, to recognize landmarks, and to assess the posture and behavior of other pandas during encounters, but I rely less on vision than on smell and sound. My teeth, as mentioned, are highly specialized. My molars are broad and flat with complex ridges, more similar to the teeth of a herbivore than a carnivore. They are adapted for grinding, not for slicing meat. My canines, while sharp, are not as large or as recurved as those of predatory bears. They function primarily in social interactions, in displays of aggression, and in defense. My jaw muscles, however, are massive, and my skull is robust, with heavy bone and prominent ridges for muscle attachment. This gives me one of the most powerful bites of any bear species relative to body size, capable of crushing bamboo stems that would defy most herbivores. This bite force is essential for my diet, but it also makes me formidable in defense. A panda can inflict serious injury with a bite, and even large predators are wary of confronting an adult. My digestive system, despite its inefficiency, has some adaptations to a bamboo diet. My stomach lining is thick and muscular, capable of churning and crushing the bamboo fragments further. I produce large volumes of saliva, which lubricates the plant material and begins the process of breaking down starches. My small intestine is relatively short, typical of carnivores, and absorbs nutrients rapidly from the digesta that pass through. My large intestine, or colon, is longer than in many carnivores, allowing some additional water absorption and perhaps some bacterial fermentation, though far less than in ruminants or other specialized herbivores. The bacteria in my gut belong to genera that are capable of breaking down cellulose and hemicellulose, the structural carbohydrates in plant cell walls, but they are not present in the numbers or diversity seen in dedicated herbivores. Recent studies using DNA sequencing to identify gut bacteria have found that my microbial community resembles that of other bears more than that of herbivores, despite my herbivorous diet. This suggests that I have not evolved a specialized gut microbiome to match my diet, another indication that my bamboo specialization is relatively recent in evolutionary terms, perhaps only a few million years old, not enough time for extensive microbial coevolution. The evolutionary history of my species is still being pieced together through fossils, genetics, and comparative anatomy. The earliest panda fossils, belonging to the genus Ailuropoda, date to the late Pliocene and early Pleistocene, roughly 2 to 3 million years ago. These early pandas were smaller than modern individuals and had a broader diet, including meat and a wider variety of plants. Over time, as bamboo became more abundant in the cooling, drying climates of the Pleistocene, pandas became more specialized, and their anatomy shifted accordingly. Fossil teeth show a progression toward broader, flatter molars. Fossil skulls show increasingly robust jaw and muscle attachments. Genetic studies suggest that the giant panda lineage diverged from other bears approximately 18 to 20 million years ago, but the genus Ailuropoda, my direct ancestors, appeared much more recently. The evolutionary path from a more generalized bear to a bamboo specialist involved changes not only in anatomy, but also in behavior, physiology, and ecology. Understanding this history helps scientists predict how I might respond to future environmental changes. If my ancestors were more flexible, does that flexibility still exist in my genome, in my developmental pathways, in my capacity to learn? Or has millions of years of specialization locked me into a narrow niche from which escape is difficult or impossible? These are open questions. My teeth wear down over time, a consequence of processing abrasive, silica-rich bamboo. Bamboo accumulates silica from the soil, depositing it in the plant tissues as microscopic particles that act like sandpaper, grinding down enamel. In young pandas, teeth are sharp and effective, but by middle age, molars show significant wear, and by old age, they may be worn nearly flat. This affects feeding efficiency. Worn teeth cannot crush bamboo as effectively, leading to larger fragments in the digestive tract, poorer nutrient extraction, and increased time spent feeding. Older pandas may compensate by selecting softer food, such as leaves or young shoots when available, but in winter, when only tough culms are accessible, they may struggle. Tooth wear is one of the factors that limits lifespan in the wild, as individuals with severely worn teeth may be unable to meet their energy needs, lose body condition, and succumb to starvation or disease. Parasites are a constant presence in my life. I carry a variety of internal parasites, including roundworms, tapeworms, and flukes, as well as external parasites such as ticks and mites. These parasites are generally not lethal, but they impose costs. Internal parasites consume nutrients, damage intestinal tissues, and can cause diarrhea or weight loss. External parasites cause irritation, can transmit diseases, and may lead to secondary infections if I scratch excessively. I groom regularly to remove parasites, using my claws and teeth to pick through my fur, but I cannot eliminate them entirely. In managed care, pandas are treated with antiparasitic drugs, and parasite loads are kept low, contributing to better health and longer lifespans. In the wild, parasite loads fluctuate with season, diet, and individual condition, and they are a normal, if burdensome, part of life. Disease is less well understood in wild pandas. Viral, bacterial, and fungal infections occur, but documenting them requires capturing or finding dead individuals, both of which are rare events. Canine distemper virus, a disease that affects domestic dogs and wild carnivores, has been detected in pandas and is a cause for concern, especially as dogs are common in and around reserves. Pandas are susceptible to the virus, and outbreaks could devastate small, isolated populations. Vaccination programs for domestic dogs in panda habitat are part of conservation efforts to reduce this risk. Other diseases such as respiratory infections, gastrointestinal ailments, and skin conditions have been documented in captive pandas and likely occur in the wild as well. but their prevalence and impact are difficult to assess. My vocalization repertoire, while not as complex as that of some social mammals, is diverse and context-specific. Bleats, as mentioned, are used by cubs to call mothers and by adults during courtship. Honks signal fear or submission, often given by a subordinate individual encountering a dominant one. Barks are alarm calls, sharp and sudden, alerting others to danger. Huffs and snorts express annoyance or discomfort, often during tense encounters. Growls and roars are aggressive signals, used by males in competition or by any individual defending itself. Chirps and squeals are part of courtship and mating, along with moans and groans. The acoustic structure of these vocalizations varies among individuals, and pandas can likely recognize each other by voice, though this has not been rigorously tested. Vocal communication is supplemented by scent, posture, and behavior, creating a multimodal system that conveys information about identity, state, and intention. My posture and body language are also communicative. A stiff, upright stance with ears forward signals alertness or aggression. A lowered head and averted gaze signal submission or avoidance. Rolling onto the back with legs in the air is a submissive or playful gesture, often seen in cubs or in non-threatening encounters between adults. Head bobbing and swaying may be appeasement behaviors, signaling non-aggression. Tail position, though my tail is short, can also convey information, with a raised tail potentially signaling confidence or aggression, though this is less clear in pandas than in some other mammals. Much of this communication is subtle and has been studied more in captive settings, where observation is easier than in the wild, where interactions are brief and individuals are difficult to observe. My climbing ability, while impressive, is not without risk. Falls do occur, particularly among juveniles who are less experienced or among adults navigating slippery or rotten branches. Injuries from falls can include broken bones, internal trauma, and lacerations, any of which can be debilitating or fatal in the wild where medical care is absent. Despite these risks, climbing is an important behavior, providing access to food, safety from terrestrial threats, and suitable resting sites. Cubs, in particular, spend much time in trees, where they are safer from predators and where they can rest while their mothers forage below. My interaction with bamboo is not just consumption but also shaping. As I feed, I break stems, strip leaves, and trample understory vegetation, creating gaps and altering the structure of the bamboo thicket. These gaps may allow light to reach the forest floor, promoting the growth of other plants or the regeneration of bamboo from rhizomes. Bamboo is a clonal plant, spreading through underground stems that send up new shoots, and it can recover quickly from disturbance. My feeding may even stimulate bamboo growth in some cases, though this is speculative and not well studied. In any case, my presence is part of the disturbance regime in these forests, along with wind, snow, landslides, and the activities of other animals. My relationship with Asiatic black bears is complex. These bears, Ursus thibtanus, are smaller and more arboreal than I am, and they are true omnivores, eating fruit, nuts, insects, and meat in addition to bamboo. They are more aggressive and bold, and encounters between pandas and black bears can be tense. Black bears may displace pandas from feeding sites or dens, and there are reports of black bears killing panda cubs, though such events are rare and difficult to confirm. In general, I avoid black bears when possible, and they avoid me, but in areas where food is scarce or habitat is limited, competition may increase. Conservation efforts that benefit pandas often benefit black bears as well, and the two species are part of the same ecological community, their fates intertwined. The role of fire in my habitat is minimal. The montane forests I inhabit are wet and fire is rare, though not absent. Lightning strikes can ignite fires during dry periods, and human-set fires, either accidental or intentional for land clearing, do occur. Fire can destroy bamboo and other vegetation, temporarily removing food sources and forcing me to move. Bamboo can resprout from rhizomes after fire, but recovery takes time, and repeated fires can degrade habitat. Fire is not a natural part of the ecological cycle in these forests to the extent it is in some other ecosystems, and my species has no specific adaptations to fire. I simply avoid burned areas and seek intact forest. The water in my habitat, in streams, springs, and seasonal ponds, supports not only me but a rich community of aquatic and semi-aquatic species. Amphibians, including the Chinese giant salamander, the largest amphibian in the world, live in mountain streams. Fish, invertebrates, and aquatic plants thrive in these cold, clear waters. I drink from these sources, and I occasionally forage along stream banks, perhaps eating aquatic plants or scavenging carrion washed downstream. The health of these aquatic systems is linked to forest health, as the trees stabilize soil, filter runoff, and regulate water flow. Deforestation and degradation upstream can lead to sedimentation, pollution, and altered hydrology, affecting not only aquatic species, but also my access to clean water. My status as a national treasure in China has made me a symbol of pride and a focus of policy. The Chinese government has invested heavily in panda conservation, establishing reserves, funding research, and promoting international cooperation. Pandas have been loaned to zoos around the world as part of diplomatic and conservation agreements, generating funds and raising awareness. These loans, often referred to as panda diplomacy, have been both celebrated and criticized. Supporters argue that they spread conservation messages and fund field programs. Critics argue that they prioritize political and economic goals over animal welfare, and that they concentrate resources on a single species. The truth likely lies between these extremes. Panda diplomacy has undoubtedly raised the profile of conservation globally, and the funds generated have supported habitat protection. But it is also true that pandas in zoos, while well cared for, are removed from the wild populations that ultimately need protection. Reintroduction programs, as mentioned, are ongoing. Captive-born pandas are trained in semi-wild enclosures, where they learn to forage, climb, and avoid humans and potential predators. They are monitored after release with GPS collars, and their survival and behavior are assessed. Early reintroductions met with mixed results, with some individuals dying within months due to starvation, injury, or failure to adapt. More recent releases have been more successful, with some individuals surviving multiple years, establishing home ranges, and even breeding. These successes are encouraging, but the challenges remain formidable. Released pandas must integrate into wild populations, which may involve competition or aggression from resident individuals. They must learn to navigate landscapes with human presence, avoiding roads, villages, and livestock. They must cope with weather extremes, disease, and parasites without the support of veterinary care. Each release is an experiment, and the lessons learned inform future efforts. The question of genetic rescue, the intentional movement of individuals between isolated populations to increase genetic diversity, is an active area of discussion. Small, isolated populations lose genetic diversity over time through inbreeding and genetic drift, and this loss can reduce fitness, making individuals more susceptible to disease and less able to adapt to environmental change. Genetic rescue involves translocating individuals from one population to another, introducing new genetic variation. This can increase fitness and population viability, but it also carries risks. Translocated individuals may carry diseases to which the recipient population has no immunity. They may be maladapted to the local environment, with traits suited to a different climate or bamboo species. The social disruption caused by introducing strangers into established populations can lead to conflict and injury. These risks must be weighed against the benefits, and decisions must be based on careful genetic and ecological analysis. Some panda populations are candidates for genetic rescue, while others are more isolated or stable and may not require intervention yet. Climate models project a range of outcomes for pandas, depending on the severity and pace of warming, the response of bamboo species, and the ability of pandas and forests to adapt. Some models suggest that suitable habitat could decrease by significant percentages, perhaps 30 to 50% or more by the end of the century, with the greatest losses at lower elevations and in the southern parts of my range. Other models are more optimistic, suggesting that if protected areas are well managed and corridors maintained, pandas may be able to shift their ranges and track suitable conditions. No model can predict the future with certainty, as they depend on assumptions about human behavior, emissions trajectories, and ecological responses, all of which are uncertain. What is clear is that climate change adds a new layer of threat to an already vulnerable species, and that conservation strategies must be flexible and adaptive, capable of responding to changing conditions. The concept of adaptive management, adjusting conservation actions based on monitoring and feedback, is central to modern panda conservation. This means regularly assessing population size, genetic diversity, habitat quality, and threats, and modifying strategies as needed. If a corridor is not being used, perhaps because of human disturbance or lack of food, it may need to be redesigned or enhanced. If a population is declining despite protection, the causes must be investigated and addressed, whether they are disease, poaching, or bamboo die-offs. Adaptive management requires good data, rigorous analysis, and the institutional capacity to act on findings. It is resource-intensive and requires long-term commitment, but it offers the best chance of success in a changing world. Education and community engagement are also critical. The people who live in and around panda habitat are the ones who directly affect my survival. If they see conservation as an imposition, as a restriction on their livelihoods and land use, they may resist or undermine it. If they see conservation as bringing benefits, whether through employment, tourism, improved ecosystem services like clean water, or simply pride in protecting a national symbol, they are more likely to support it. Programs that involve local communities in monitoring, patrolling, and decision-making, that provide compensation for crop damage or livestock predation by wildlife, and that invest in sustainable livelihoods like ecotourism or bamboo crafts, all help build support for conservation. Education programs in schools teach children about pandas and biodiversity, fostering a conservation ethic in the next generation. These efforts are as important as habitat protection or captive breeding, because they address the human dimensions of conservation. Monitoring my population is a complex task. Pandas are solitary, elusive, and live in rugged terrain, making direct counts difficult. Surveys often rely on scat analysis, with teams of field workers walking transects through reserves, collecting feces, and using DNA extracted from the samples to identify individuals. By comparing genetic profiles, researchers can estimate how many unique individuals are present in an area. Camera traps provide additional data, capturing images of pandas at bait stations or along trails. Each individual can be identified by unique markings, subtle differences in facial features, scars, or variations in the size and shape of black patches. By combining scat and camera data, researchers build a picture of population size, distribution, and density. These surveys are labor-intensive and expensive, but they are essential for tracking trends and assessing the effectiveness of conservation actions. The future of pandas depends on the choices made today and in the coming decades. Habitat must be protected and expanded. Corridors must be maintained and enhanced. Climate change must be mitigated globally, and adaptation strategies must be implemented locally. Captive breeding and reintroduction programs must continue, improving methods and increasing success rates. Research must continue to deepen understanding of panda biology, ecology, and behavior, informing management decisions. Community engagement and education must remain priorities, building support and ensuring that conservation benefits people as well as wildlife. International cooperation must continue, sharing knowledge, resources, and expertise. All of this requires funding, political will, and a recognition that the survival of pandas is not separate from broader goals of biodiversity conservation, climate action, and sustainable development. I am a panda, a bear adapted to eat bamboo, living in the mountains of central China, a species that has survived for millions of years and now faces an uncertain future shaped by human actions. I am solitary, specialized, and vulnerable, yet I persist, feeding, resting, and moving through forests that are both my home and the focus of intense human effort to preserve them. My life is simple in its routines, complex in its ecological relationships, and important in ways that extend beyond my own survival. I am part of an ecosystem, a symbol of conservation, a subject of scientific study, and a reminder of the fragility and resilience of life. My story continues, written in the forests of Sichuan, in the efforts of conservationists, in the policies of governments, and in the values and choices of people around the world.